Hello, I'm Rebecca Rodriguez, and today I will be discussing the life of Lucian Freud. I read Breakfast with Lucian by Jordy Gregg, and this book gives some perspective on Lucian Freud's life as an artist and reveals his controversial and fascinating style, as well as reveals some of the more personal and private details of his life that was not formally disclosed, as Freud was a person who didn't really like to share much with interviewers. Lucian Freud was born on December 8, 1922. He was the middle child of 3 sons and is the grandson of Sigmund Freud. He grew up in Germany and lived there for about 10 years, but spent the rest of his life after that in England. As aforementioned, Freud was a very private person, but once people were able to befriend him and become closer to him, they started to realize what type of person he really was. Freud was generous and kind. He could also have his moments of flamboyance and craziness, and he really lit up a room every time he would step into it, and people were often attracted to his great energy and style. Additionally, Freud was also known for his very lewd behavior and for being a man with many mates and female partners throughout his life. He's even said that he fathered around 40 children, although that's more of a myth, and he really only was linked to 14. The book refers to Freud as Britain's great modern painter, and his work is easily recognizable as being very revealing, fascinating, and controversial due to the topics that he presents. A lot of his works are often nudes or portraits of people, and they can be considered very provocative, but they also are known for telling a story. Additionally, Lucian practiced figurative art, and he strayed away from the abstractionism, expressionism that was very common during the 60s. His work often showcased, quote, the intense observation of the human figure, which can be seen in several of the works that he created throughout his lifetime. While his work became symbolic of the figurative boldness present in modern artists, at the time his works were received as being extremely provocative, shocking, and unsettling. He received several great honors in Britain, such as the Order of Merit, and Freud had a great presence throughout his life, and in 2011 he passed away of an illness. Something interesting about Lucian Freud is the deep connection that he felt with poetry. He would often be found quoting poets like Tony Harrison and the Earl of Rochester. A work that he particularly enjoyed was the quatrain lines written under Nellie's picture. Freud felt that poetry was an important stimulus that reinforced his imagination and really helped to inspire some of his work and paintings. He could often be found sharing his knowledge and showing how well he learned these poems by reciting them to his friends or basically anybody who he would come in contact with. He, and I quote, learned it, declaimed it, and was comforted by it. He would use the rhymes that he would read about often in his personal life and would even share it with his children to keep them from getting bored. Additionally, Freud found that poetry could serve as an extension of the spirit of his own life. He was particularly interested in works that were truthful and shared close proximity with life. He loved all kinds of works of passion and humor, and he felt that poetry was in itself a condensed, observed truths, similar to his art style. Freud had a myriad of good works throughout his career, but I've chosen to show 7 of his major pieces. The first painting is Freud's final painting, which is titled The Portrait of the Hound, and this depicts Freud's assistant David Dawson, who was with Freud in his last moments and honestly spent more time with Freud than any other person Lucian had known. It depicts David Dawson with his whippet, and the 2 Lucian painting, Dawson posing, worked on it till the end of Freud's life. Freud spent a great amount of time on this work, and both Dawson and Freud knew that there was the possibility that Freud wouldn't be able to complete the work, and alas, the work was left unfinished upon Freud's death in 2011. The second work is a portrait appropriately titled Francis Bacon, who Freud drew after his friend Francis Bacon had drawn him, and Freud wanted to return the favor for his portraits. He took a considerable amount of time creating this portrait. However, after these 2 had created portraits for each other, there was a strained relationship between the 2 because Freud began to grow jealous of Bacon's style and how he was able to paint so freely and expressively and was able to provoke emotion, which made Lucian very jealous, and they ended up parting ways shortly after and hadn't seen each other since. The third notable work is Interior at Paddington, and this piece of art depicts a portrait of Harry Diamond, but it also has a background that is very prominent. It's even been considered that the background holds more prominence than the figure of Harry Diamond. The title supports this idea because it focuses more on Paddington than on Harry Diamond. One complaint that the subject of this painting had was that he did not like having to pose for 6 months. This work that I've included is titled The Girl with a White Dog, and it depicts Freud's first wife, Kitty Garman, while she's pregnant. This is one of Freud's earlier works, and so it has a different style from some of the works that are presented later in his life, and this can be noted in the way that the eyes and mouth of the model are painted, and it is another one of his works that showcases his consistent realism. The 5th work that I've included is titled The Painter's Mother, and it is one painting in a series of 18 that Lucian Freud painted of his mother. This series began in 1972, and it followed the death of Lucian's father, after which Lucian's mother, Lucy, had fallen into a deep depression. She sat for Lucian about over 1,000 times, and it is clear to see the deep grief that she carried throughout her life after the death of her husband. The sixth work I've included is titled Benefit Supervisor Sleeping, and it depicts subject Sue Tilley, who was pictured in the photo, who posed for Lucian and was recommended to Lucian by one of his other performers, Leigh Bowery, and at the time she was a job center supervisor. When Lucian was painting her, he said her body had a different texture from those that he had previously painted. And an interesting fact about this painting is that it held the record for being one of the highest paid works created by a living artist. The final work that I've included is titled Reflection, Self-Portrait, which is a self-portrait of Lucian Freud. And it is really memorable due to the intensity of the gaze that Freud depicts himself with, which makes it seem as though he is bursting from the image. In an interview, it is said that Freud wanted to paint a self-portrait so that he could feel how his sitters did when they had to endure his painting. Lucian Freud has contributed to the world of art through his expression that is often depicted in his work. He is able to capture the many dimensions of the personalities of his subjects and also share pieces of his personality through his portrayal of them. He has contributed several paintings and portraits in his canon of work to the world of art. and delivers works with great emotional intensity that have a deep impact on those who are able to view it. Freud wanted to be remembered, and his paintings are what made him truly remarkable during his lifetime and afterwards. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoyed my video on Lucian Freud.